Oh, okay.
Oh,
All right, very good. Well, back to
Actually,
the
you can
back
hear
to the
pretty good.
introductions then. So we have Miss
Well, that's
Enid
good.
Burton Jones, and
Yes.
it's such an honor to have you with us.
Thank you.
And we
An
have
honor
your
to be with you.
yes, thank you. And we have your son Hank.
Uh-huh.
Yes.
Good to
And
meet you, Hank. Finally. And we have Dr. James Birch is with us. He's there wearing the ball cap. He's from the Sayville School Board.
uh-huh.
And I don't
I,
know if you heard earlier when we introduced Roy from the Sayville Historical Society.
yes.
Okay, and
Uh-huh.
we introduced Jonathan from the Sayville Library.
Yes. Uh-huh.
So it is once again a real honor to have you with us. This is great. This gives us a little chance to try things out in advance and see how this will work. We are very interested in doing this again in February for Black History Month. And Jonathan Pryor from the Sayville Library is going to host that and has a tentative date of February 24th set. So we'll have to have you check your calendars and see if that works for you.
Okay.
And it would be 7 p.m. Eastern time, so it would be 4 p.m. your time on February 24th.
And if that does not work, we can absolutely work with that date and
Okay.
work with you on that for sure. It looks like from the library's calendar, it looks like it's still an open date. Many times the administration will tell me that I can't set something up that's in conflict with another program that we're hosting that evening. And so I'm busy looking for empty dates on the calendar. And I'll double check it while we're online.
Okay. Very good.
Okay, outstanding.
All right. So before we get started, does anybody have any questions about what we're
No.
doing or why?
I'm excited just to connect. I really appreciate you spending the time.
Yeah, this is fantastic.
Yes, just a little aside. I pulled out the yearbook yesterday to refresh my 1942.
I love it.
Very nice.
Awesome.
Very nice.
1942. And it's got all kinds of remarks in here and pictures.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
Oh, my goodness. What was that picture? Was that a reunion?
5 years after I graduated, I went to a class reunion.
Oh,
And
my goodness.
I'm right here.
Oh, boy.
And I didn't recognize anybody because I had left Sayville right after I graduated.
Right.
You've
Okay.
been gallivanting. We see that you've worked with generals. So you
Oh yeah,
yeah.
I've got all kinds of pictures where they're giving me citations and things of that nature. Every time I graduated, I had left. Here's one. They show when I became a branch.
I sent most of this to you.
Oh, you have them already.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
Most
Yes.
of these to you.
Okay. So
Yes.
I started out with the Signal Corps in New Jersey. It was the World War II was going on, and they ran out of men, so they decided to hire 1,000 women in one day. And they built dormitories for us, and they were going to train us to be junior engineering aides. And I was working for a company in New York as a stenographer. And when I heard about it through my cousin, I joined it. And they built dormitories for us at Fort Monmouth Vale. They were called the Vale Homes. 10 huge dormitories. 2 of them were for Negroes only.
Hmm.
Wow.
2 of them were for Negroes only. And they sent us to school full time. And as the I've been with the government for years, so I can talk about them. But they realized that toward midway through the program, that they didn't need that many women. But they went ahead and trained us. And then they had this graduation. They divided us up into units. And for example, there were 13 people in my unit. And by that time, they decided to have a reduction in force. So they let 11 of them go.
Wow.
But I was fresh out of school, so this stuff came to me, but I had to help because they hired women from the deep South and women who hadn't been to school in a long time. But that was where I met my husband. He was at Fort Monmouth in training at Fort Monmouth. What was that?
We
That's
have
somebody else joining us.
Right.
Connected. Okay.
Not sure who it is.
Maybe Ms. Vogel?
Yes.
Oh, hi, Ms. Vogel is a middle school social studies teacher. I
Oh.
invited Miss Hart and Miss Vogel.
Oh, great.
How nice.
Wonderful. Thanks for joining us, Ms. Vogel.
Thank you.
And so we're very honored today to have Enid Burton Jones with us and her son Hank from California. Both of them are in California. And we have Roy Fidelum from the Sayville Historical Society. And you know Dr. Birch, and you probably know Jonathan
Oh, yeah.
from the Sayville Library. I'm Hal Brown from Sayville Alumni Association.
I think she's driving, so it's hard for her to talk, but she
Okay.
definitely was excited to learn about the library program, especially that we're going to do in February.
Fantastic. Okay.
And
Well-
Ms. Hart is very interested too, but she couldn't join the call. I
Okay.
wanted to make sure we had people in both levels
Yes.
that were aware of it, involved in it. This way, when we roll it out through the library, people in the school know about it. You know what I mean?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Well, it's great that the community is embracing this program, and in particular the Black History Month in February, where we'll be able to talk about a good many people. But our big featured speaker will be just like the same farm will be you, Enid, and so that'll be great. So you were telling us, why don't we just continue? Because this is wonderful
Yeah.
information. You said you met your husband in Monmouth, New Jersey.
Yeah, and then he became a cadet and went to, well, he was on the verge of being shipped overseas when his application came through to become a cadet. So he went into training. And then my brother had gone into training. He had enlisted and he had become a commissioned officer and navigator pilot. And navigator, bombardier navigator. And so when his class graduated, the white pilots back in those days refused to fly with them. So they sent the whole class over to Tuskegee for the class to learn to become pilots. That's another example of the government overdoing. And he ended up in the class ahead of my husband, who had been kept from going overseas by becoming a cadet. So that's when they first met, was down in Tuskegee.
I see.
Since that time, a few years ago, a lieutenant colonel came by from Tuskegee, and they were interviewing. They interviewed my brother in New York, and then they interviewed me, and they have that interview in their archives now from the time that we spent down there and the different things that we encountered while we were down there. I went down there to work while he was being in training for a cadet, and I worked on the base during that period. And then the war sort of came to a close. So things started disintegrating as far as the classes and things of that nature.
Right, right. Well, we had a couple of questions that we sent you out in advance.
Yeah, that's what I was looking for. My son was trying to organize my papers and it got buried. Here it is. Yeah, I have. As a young Black girl in the predominantly Caucasian Sayville High School, were you treated fairly and respectfully? And I will say yes. Everyone treated me very well while I was there. And if there was any problems, they sort of kept it from me. So I never had to come face to face with any of those problems.
Right.
And
Well,
for us, that's important. And of all the questions that I'm curious about, that's the one. We love where we live, but it's a bubble and it's not diverse. And we want our kids to grow up better than the society that we grew up in. So, we need to know our past and how you were treated and how your brother was treated. And also how the flock was treated. We know Father Divine wasn't treated well. That's the history accounts. So this is, we're curious.
Yes. Well, that was something that I had no control over, that I moved away from. As soon as I graduated, I left Sayville and got away from that religion.
Right. But we know from previous conversation with you, you had at least one experience that stuck in your mind where you weren't treated fairly. Do you remember that one? It had to do with an essay contest.
Yes.
Oh, well, I had, there were, during the time I was in Sayville, I told you about the time that my brother and I both were, they had us to go enter this contest with all the business classes, and how he won. This is all the schools in Long Island, and he was second in the typing, and I was third in the shorthand. And so then they had us to go out to, what is that, a town out in where the headquarters. Anyhow, I went out there to take an exam for the federal government, and apparently I did quite well, because when I left school, I went to New York, and they didn't have phones in the homes, so my aunt and uncle had a haberdashery in Harlem, and they had a telephone, so they put an ad in the New York Times saying colored secretary, blah, colored stenographer, blah, 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 And I started getting calls that next morning, and it wasn't until about the third call that I realized that nobody asked me about my skills. They asked me how I looked, what my figure was like, all kinds of extraneous questions that didn't pertain to the work. And so I burst into tears on that one. So then a few weeks later, I got a letter from the FBI. And because the school had sent the business students while we were still in school to Patchogue. Was it Patchogue? It was another town.
That's nearby. Patchogue's right next door.
Yeah, I know. It was the bigger one. Anyhow, we went there and took this exam, and apparently I did quite well on it, because while I was in Manhattan, I was living with my father at the time, and they sent me a notice that an offer for a job. So I guess I didn't realize it, but they must have been very shocked when I walked in the door, because he never once mentioned the offer. All he could tell me was that, oh, you don't want to work. This job is in Washington, D.C., and I have daughters. I wouldn't want them to live, and talk me out of it. And I let him. I was dumb enough to let him talk me out of it. But he was probably pretty shocked when I walked in. So those were two instances. And there were some others, but a lot of them I overlooked.
I
Well-
think Helen was referring to your, when you were still in school and that job with the bank.
Oh, well, I didn't find out about that until, because when the graduates, I was ninth highest in the class when I graduated from high school. And I won the bank award for the highest score or something. And it wasn't until later, and I don't know how much later it was, that I found out that I was the first student that won that award in the history of that bank that had been offered a job at the conclusion, as a result of winning the award.
Well, there was, you told me about an essay contest where you didn't think you were going to win, but then you did get chosen.
Yeah.
Tell us about that one.
Well, they had students from all mixed up. There were rich kids and poor kids and everything. And we were all integrated. We never thought about the status. So Mr. Brewski was my homeroom teacher, and he announced that at one of their fraternal organizations, and for the life of me, of 96, I can't remember half of what happened. But anyhow, they were having their meeting, and it was during one of the holidays, and he wanted somebody to give a patriotic speech. So he prevailed on the class to choose somebody to do that for the class. So they chose me and another girl, and she came from a very well-to-do family. So I went ahead and did my speech. I can't remember what I said, but anyhow, it was one of these fiery patriotic speeches. And so then she got up and she did hers, and she talked a lot of statistics and a lot of things. It sounded like a lot of work had been put into it, And so I was sitting there and I wanted to crawl under my desk. I said, oh my God, she did such a terrific job. I was so embarrassed. So when we got it, they sent us out in the hall while they made a decision. And while we were out there, I was congratulating her and telling her what a wonderful job she did. And when I went in, they told me they had chosen me. I could have fainted, because I really believed that she would get it. So I went ahead and went to that and made the speech, and it was well received from what I could recall.
And that included what was supposed to be a job, wasn't it? Like an internship at the bank?
No,
No?
those are two separate things.
Oh, okay.
Because the job, the internship at the bank was supposed to happen after I graduated.
I see. And what happened with that?
Well, I got the award, but I found out through the grapevine, I don't know how, that I was it was the first time they had not offered that position to somebody who got that award from the school.
Right. And that's, to me, you may not have found out explicitly why, but I'm sure it was because you're a person of color. It was
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right. So they had a tendency to try to avoid anything. If somebody, I know even back in junior high, if somebody tried to make a joke or something. I just remember one instance in the class where a boy got up and told one of his stupid jokes, and it sort of was racially tinged, and the teacher told him to sit down and shut up. I never forgot that, but everyone turned and looked at me after he told the joke. That's why it stuck in my mind, But other than that, they really shielded me in a way that I appreciate.
Now you mentioned Mr. Brewski,
Yeah.
and he was your homeroom teacher. He's a legend, you know.
Yes, I've got a picture of him in this reunion too. I can, they took this picture. Here he is, right here on the end.
Yes.
See that?
Oh, sure. Absolutely.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
he had to leave teaching because of the war. He went and taught. I mean, he went and fought in the war, you know.
His name was
Oh.
Brewski?
Yeah,
Okay.
Mr. Brewski. And later on in life, he retired to Florida, and he published a book of poetry.
Oh, did he?
Yeah, he was a very loved teacher, and he went back to Sayville for all the reunions.
Yeah.
I don't remember how many years he taught. I'm going to say around 40.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. Well, he took a personal interest in me. He would tell me if I was good, and he'd tell me if I was bad, because I had this yearbook, and so I looked through it. I was voted that year when they had the person who was the most versatile, and I was voted the most versatile, and it named all of these things that I did. I was doing music and sports, and it's all listed in there, you know.
Nice.
And so they had a play once that they put on, and they needed a native person. It was a South Pacific sort of a play, and they needed a native person in it. And I remember they chose me to do it. And then I played a bass trombone, and I'd walk in the parades with the bass trombone.
I didn't know that.
And
I remember the clarinet.
yeah.
No.
And, so the music teacher was so wonderful. He decided he wanted to have me to put on a program one time with a bass clarinet. So I put on this program at one of the assemblies, playing the bass clarinet, and I'll never forget it. Afterwards, Mr. Brewski said, "That was terrible." You know, there isn't much you can do with a bass clarinet. Boom, 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 boom.
Yeah, that's funny.
But anyhow, that was funny. But everyone went out of their way to really, help me and to make it. And I was in, like I said, I like basketball and tennis and all of the sports.
Now,
That was my life.
yes, that's great. And I want to get back to that. But while Roy is here from the Historical Society, his mom is alive and lives in Florida, and she knows you.
Who?
Her name was Edith Lyon. Edith Lyon?
Yes.
Lion.
She was in your brother's class.
So
she was a couple years older, but she had sisters. So there were the Lyon sisters and the Long sisters.
mm-hmm.
But my mother has a message for you. She says hello to you. I talked to her today. She said, say hello to her. And she said, you and your brother were well respected and well liked. So I'm glad to hear you confirm that you were treated well.
Yeah, very well. Oh, that's wonderful. Good to her. I wish I had a better memory on, other than looking at, because I said, as I looked at these pictures, a funny thing happened when I went to the reunion. And because I left right after graduation, I never saw anybody for the interim time. And I can't remember how much.
Hi, Connor. I'm on a meeting.
Yeah, I can't remember how many years, but as I said, when I went back to the reunion, I didn't recognize anybody. Of course, they knew me because I'm the only one, you know.
Right.
So, so they wrote it up in the newspaper, and I even have the article here that they printed in the paper about my trip where they had this thing. This is the reunion thing that they had in
My.
the class of 42.
Wow.
And
Oh, boy.
and it says class of 1942 gets together, and they said members and friends of the Sayville High School class of 42 gathered at the Shore Restaurant Saturday night. And Thomas Bond, you remember him? He was our president, and then it says he acted as master of ceremonies and awarded prizes to Mrs. Enid Burton Jones for having traveled from California for the
Oh, yeah.
the farthest distance covered by any of the former schoolmates.
That's wonderful. That's good.
And they had a list of people that attended.
Right.
So, but after that, I lost touch with everybody, and I really regret that because I went into Manhattan, then I was involved in the Fort Monmouth, and then I was down at Tuskegee, and then I was back in New York for a while, and then I used my skills. It was so easy to get a job because even when I went to Tuskegee, I had been in training. I got a job after the government taught us how to be a meter repairman and junior engineering aides, they call it. And I applied for a job. And I was working for Westinghouse, one of those companies in New Jersey. And we were calibrating meters. So I worked there for a long time, and I had to take a subway, a ferry, and a bus to get to work. But I never forgot that because it was after that I went down to Tuskegee after I got married. And so when I applied for work down at Tuskegee, they asked me if I could type and do shorthand. I said, oh, yeah, but I can't do that anymore. And I wanted a job doing something else. And they said, no, we don't hire women for jobs like that. So they said, sit down and type. And they gave me a typing test, and they gave me a shorthand test. And I think I made 97 on the shorthand and flunked the typing because I hadn't touched a typewriter in a couple of years. So they made me practice. Of course, I passed it, you know. So I worked down there during that time also when I was in Tuskegee, but encountered an awful lot of prejudice down there.
Are there can I ask, are there any other folks from the high school that you remember, any of the other teachers or perhaps some friends that you had? Or
That was it. My closest friend, unfortunately, she was, I think, the valedictorian, but she passed away at an early age. After that, I kind of lost touch with everybody.
I see.
And my brother, to keep it was his influence that, because he worked in Manhattan, in Brooklyn, and he was working with when you're ready to hear about him, I'll tell you about him. But he's the one that kept in touch with Sayville.
Right.
You were both top students, so to me, I think that's just really exciting. You know, we know he went to University of Michigan. He was the lead civil engineer for the Twin Towers. You know, Hal is a real great researcher of alumni. But when we learned about the two of you, I just, like, the Board of Ed was blown away. Like, that we had a Tuskegee Airman we never knew about, graduated from Sayville High School. We were just blown away. And this is really, this is neat talking to you. Thank you.
Yeah, he did all of this on his own. uh, enlisted and worked his way up the ranks. And then when he got his discharge, he went to college, took his GI Bill, and went to Pratt Institute. And that's where he met his wife, and she was a doctor by then. And so then they got married, and then he got his advanced degree at Columbia.
Right.
And then he was hired by the World Trade Center, and he got worked up his way up and did quite a few of responsible jobs, like, you know, the George Washington Bridge, that extra, they have 2 levels now. He
Yep.
was partly responsible for the second level.
Yeah, remember.
Wow.
And then he was working in Brooklyn on the waterfront.
In the Battery. I think that was this.
I don't know if they called it that particular area, but he could point out different projects that he did in Brooklyn. And then he got hired to, as part of this group. He was with 3 of them. There was, he was a top engineer. Golly, I'm not working. My brain's not functioning too well, but there were 3 of them. They even decided on the location, along with the top
Right.
officials,
Right.
of where to put the World Trade Center. And so they decided on the area down there by the, you know, in the east, by the river, the Hudson River, down in the southern part of Manhattan, because it was on rock solid ground. And the problem that he had, in fact, I've got some videos that he did after the explosion that explained all of that. And he explained how they had to freeze the river in order to work on the World Trade Center.
To keep it from coming, keep the water from coming in.
They had to freeze it. And it was like a basin.
Yeah, they built what was called the bathtub.
Yeah.
It's that concrete. That's still there, by the way. And when the center went down, he was concerned because he heard they were going to cut the ties to the bathtub. And he was afraid the Hudson would infringe on that area. But that didn't happen. And when, I'll just add something. When he came out to visit when I was in high school, and he spread a bunch of drawings out on the floor. And this is in the early 60s. And he, you know, I asked Uncle Alton, what are you doing? What is this? You know, and he says, well, he says, I'm building the tallest building on earth. And then he looked up and he says, and it's 2 buildings, you know, with a smile on his face. And I had never heard of the World Trade. It was years later that anybody heard about it, you know, but yeah, he stayed on it, I think, up until the point they were doing the construction.
Yeah, he was on it where they were digging the hole,
Mhm.
you know, and so, but New York ran into trouble there for a while. I think Lindsay was governor at the time. I mean, mayor at the time, and they ran out of money because in the interim, he was hired by Roosevelt, Governor Roosevelt, for another project out. What was that island called? Roosevelt Island was formerly called.
Breeds?
Hmm?
Was it Breeds?
It could be, but they changed the name to Roosevelt.
Yeah, I know they did.
They were going, and he was hired from the World Trade Center to head up that whole, and they were on Fifth Avenue, and they had this tall building. He had an office of staff, and he traveled all over the country to get ideas because they were going to make that the most modern city in the world. And they were going to have it at different levels. They were going to have from the rich to the poor living there. And so he went all over Europe. He went to Russia to get, to build up his background to do it. And then he came back to and gave a lecture in San Francisco. And then he went to work on it. And so in the meantime, they ran out of money. But he left the World Trade Center before they started actually going, because when I would call him, I'd say, how's the World Trade Center? Because they had to they couldn't work on it for a while because they were out of money. And so he said, they've got a hole dug so deep that if I stick my head down, I can hear them talking Chinese. He was really he deep. Had a real sense of humor.
It was probably Nelson Rockefeller that was the governor at that time, wasn't it?
Yeah, Nelson Rockefeller. He chose him personally.
I see. Okay.
To be the head of that. And then they ran out of money, so they had to cut way back. And the only, if they still, I imagine if you've gone over the river, the East River to the Roosevelt Island, you have to take that, what do you call it, the thing that goes over the river. But anyhow, he started that too. So
yeah, he loved New York.
In the meantime, his wife was made head of Medicaid, I guess. What does they call it in New York? We have Medicare and Medicaid. And I don't know what they have in New York, but she was made the head doctor of all of that. And she had her own building down a few blocks down from where he was in Manhattan. So they knew all the commissioners and everybody, And he ended up when they ran out of money and he finally retired, he went to he was teaching at Pratt College. That's where they had his memorial service when he passed away a couple.
Is he buried in Oklahoma? Is that where he's buried or no? Your brother.
Who?
Hal.
No.
Al, yeah.
No, in New York.
In New York, in Manhattan, in Brooklyn.
In Brooklyn. Okay.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. She had her own practice in Brooklyn. And so he just, I don't know how he was able to do all that he did.
Yeah, they lived in Brooklyn, almost their whole adult professional life. And she actually had an office in the lower, they had a brownstone. But they always wanted to live right in town, right on the east side, right near the Central Park. And so finally they decided they sold their house and got an apartment. I think it was like $10,000 a month to live there.
It was more than that.
It was more than that. But and it wasn't real fancy, but it was a lot of money. And so they got to live their dream near the end. And when you walked out the front of their building, you were right at the Museum of Natural History.
She loved museums.
So she loved museums, and she was right there
God.
by the museums.
Yeah.
But he started, the first time we heard there was a problem, because he was very sharp and always told jokes. I mean, constantly, and real witty stuff. But his son called me one day and said, Dad has changed. And he's changed. He's not himself. And, we figure he must have had a stroke. And, so that was the beginning of his kind of going in and out. When but on his 92nd birthday, his wife wanted to throw a party, and it was a Tuskegee Airmen party right in New York. And so they weren't sure if he was going to be in or out for it. And I went with my mom there. And so they had some other friends drive us to the event. And there were a bunch of Tuskegee Airmen there, a lot of people. And then they weren't sure if he was going to be able to make it, but he showed up. He had his Tuskegee Airman jacket on, his hat. You know, when I walked up, he says, "Hey, Hank, you know, haven't seen you in a long time." And he even gave a talk at the event. They had him front and center. And, but then after that, he faded again. And so it was, you know, difficult at the end for the family. But and they had moved out of that apartment into another place where in the, another part of New York.
Yonkers. They were in Yonkers.
Yonkers.
She's still in there. It's a very expensive place there.
It's a senior living facility, and
And
he eventually moved down to the Alzheimer's where he had 24-hour care, and then he passed away. But just an amazing man. He was an influence on me, you know, with regard to engineering. I mean, I became a professional engineer, but never to the height of him. I couldn't even match her. I mean, you know. And
It's a pretty high bar, right?
you know, me and my brothers, you know, one brother's in business pharmaceuticals. He's well, he was like a senior VP when he left, and he retired, but he's still working. And the other brother is at Lawrence Livermore Laboratories. He's an auditor there, and he's been there for a number of years. But it was hard to keep up with Mom. And one more thing I want to say. She was always Mom. I mean, always there in the mornings, you know, breakfast, always there in the evening, dinner. We just knew her as Mom. And we didn't know all the stuff about her. You know, it was only family at home. And occasionally she'll come home with a picture of a cool rocket or some kind of a weapon or something, because she was buying weapons for the military.
Wow.
And
So as busy as she was, she still had time to make sure you were fed in the morning.
he did that.
Well, you know what they say, if you want something done right, you want the job done right, give the job to a busy person.
Right. And I didn't realize how, you know, about her career until I went to her retirement. My brothers couldn't go. I went with her, and it was a room full of people. And I mean, generals and admirals and, you know, all these people. And I thought, wow, this is a big retirement for a lot of people. It was just for her.
Wow.
When she left.
they wanted to, I held off as long as I could. I didn't want to have it. And so they would have been twice as large if I had agreed early enough, because some of the people would have come from distances, you know. But I decided at the last minute to let them go ahead with it. So it was mostly local people that came, because I had worked up to being the deputy chief to the head of contracts, and we were over in the Department of Defense, and we headed up an office that covered from Seattle to San Diego and the Hawaiian Islands and the Mariana Islands. And so it was, I was the deputy to the chief of that contract office. So it was pretty prestigious. They had never had a woman. And then, in fact, most of those jobs that I had, there were never, I was the first woman.
Yeah.
Right.
So what was there something in the water in your house between you and your brother? Like, you know, like,
Sayville High School.
There you go.
now, when did you move to Sayville? What grade were you in? Do you remember what grade you were in when you moved to Sayville?
What grade I was in?
Yeah,
I was in the 6th grade, and I remember sitting in front of this boy, and they even had inkwells that were open.
Wow.
And you know, people used to pour ink into because you had your pen and you dipped your pen in the ink. And I wore braids, and my braid would get in his inkwell. And if I turned my head, ink would splash everywhere. I never forgot that. And I think he would do things to help me to do that,
Yeah, probably.
Turn my head real quick without thinking, and get ink everywhere. But anyhow, they had, I remember I was going to a school in Harlem, and they were not teaching us at all at the school that I went to. And, but I used to love to read. And so they were having a what do you call it? Spelling bee. When they had the 7th and 8th grade. I just started the 7th, and they had this spelling bee with everybody involved. And I remember winning that for some reason. And, but it was because I like to read, I did that. But that was so funny.
Well, those are some great remembrances. Thank you for sharing with us. We appreciate it. Well, we've had you tied up here for almost an hour, and we don't want to impose on your time, much more here. Do you have any questions for us?
Well, let's see. I'm looking at the questions you sent to me.
Okay.
Oh, and Alton and I both, well, when he started playing an instrument, I decided I wanted to play an instrument. And so he was playing the trumpet. And so then I says, well, I want to play the clarinet. So my mother went out and bought a clarinet, and I took it to the class, and I said, I can't remember the name of the instructor, the music instructor. But anyhow, he said, this is wrong. We need a B-flat clarinet for you to play. So he says, but I've got a thing for you. He says, we need a bass clarinet player. Would you mind becoming a bass clarinet player? And you can use our clarinet. So that's how I ended up becoming a bass clarinet player. So so the two of us would participate in the parades and, and everything. He'd be playing the trumpet, and I'd be playing the bass clarinet. So it was funny. So they had, and I was in the glee club and basketball, and you name it, I was in all of it.
So how many people were in your class? And I'm sure we have records of this.
It was 100, because I came out 9th. It was 100 and something.
Right.
And
okay.
I guess I used to know it was 150. It was the whole class, they were broken.
Right.
Homes.
Old Sayville served a large area. It served all the way.
They had students from all the surrounding cities came.
Yeah, that's what Roy was saying. You had Ronkonkoma in there, and Oakdale, and
right.
Bohemia, Holbrook.
Yeah, right.
Right, and there's all school districts in those places. Like they built. There's now, I think it's something is 1.5 million people, and each of those areas outside of Sayville and West Sayville, they each have their own school. Mm-hmm. So, but like somebody that, say, for example, that was from Ronkonkoma, like we're doing, and this is something that I'll mention here, is we're making a wall of honor. Anybody that was a veteran that graduated from Sayville High School is going to be part of the wall of honor. So it's going to be neat. The principal's been really trying to do this for a long time, and he got some resources, and we're going to do it. So we were talking, if you graduate from Sayville High School and you're a veteran, there's a very good chance that if you lived later, you would not have gone to Sayville High School. But those students, they're Sayville alumni. So it's different, it's going to be a fun process, but we're definitely, like, I will be pushing to feature your brother somehow, because I think that just speaks to something very special to have it, for us, because, where we live, we're proud of it. At the same time, like we people like we just didn't know till Hal discovered, that we had a Tuskegee Airman. That's just, I think we're all of our minds are blown by it because it's, we know very little about Father Divine and about that community.
Yeah,
And
well,
about,
yeah. Well, as far as the religion part of it, I have downplayed that. I feel like I escaped from that. That
Yeah.
was like, so I don't dwell on that at all, with the
Right.
religion part of it.
Right.
So did you see it more as a cult?
Yeah, I
Mhm.
felt.
Yep. Mhm.
And it was difficult. That was the most difficult thing for me, and can't even talk about it now.
Yeah.
and
She's never talked about it with us.
Right.
When she gets to that, the conversation is over. But I noticed something in her book. I guess she did have a lot of friends just by the number of people who signed.
Oh,
And
wow.
they just page after page after page of,
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
with wishes, and people that knew her, just reading some of these, they knew her
And
well.
reading it back, look at that.
Oh my goodness, yeah. Even they ran out of pictures, and I don't know if you could see it from the reflection, but
Yeah, we can see it. Oh, yeah. Look at that. Very nice.
so was Seward Travis, was he the superintendent when you were there, or is he much earlier? Do you remember who were the principal and I wonder if they're, I'm curious.
Who?
Seward Travis. He was, but that might have been, Roy, I might be way off in years, right? That could have been much earlier.
Yeah, because see, I was back in World War II.
Yeah. But he might have even been before that.
I think he was.
Huh? He could have been before that.
Yeah, I think he was. Yeah.
Well, maybe so, but I don't remember some things. Some things I remember and some I don't, But it was wonderful. I have warm memories of it. Warm memories.
moving forward, I think what was particularly helpful was the format, when you listed what you'd be discussing. That would be very helpful for looking forward to February.
Okay.
That, because she was able to read through and it refreshed memory, and where she could discuss those items. And then you would also be able to be specific with regard to the type of information you'd like to receive from her that would be helpful to the students.
Yes. Well, I think very much parallel to what we talked about today, be pretty much a rehash of what we talked about today, but Dr. Birch may have some other questions, or Roy or Jonathan, some some of the other folks here may have some other questions, but we would get those. We'll get those to you in advance so you can think about them, and some of them you may not even be able to. We're going to stay all away from the whole Father Divine deal. We're not even going to get into that. Don't worry. It's mainly just going to be what we talked about today. The Sayville High, and about you and your experiences and your music and your spelling bees, and about your brother, and then about both of you going on and having these incredible careers. And Hank, we sure hope you'll be there, because you contributed a lot today.
It should be.
Yeah,
because of COVID,
I know.
did all my travels in January, February, and March.
Right.
Barely back from Europe.
I know. Well, we're in the same boat here on the East Coast.
Yeah.
Same boat.
Yeah. So I took a COVID test last night to make sure I'd be okay.
Oh, that's very wise. Very wise.
One last thing that you had, a question that you had here. How did you cope with racial inequality throughout your life? Because most of the jobs I had, I was the first woman to ever occupy those jobs. Mm-hmm. And I always and I tried to pass the feeling on to my kids. You don't let people tell you about yourself. You go ahead and do your thing, and totally ignore that aspect of it.
Well,
So
and they learned that lesson well, Enid, because Hank has told me the same thing. He learned that lesson from you. It's one of the first things he told me.
Yeah.
Yeah, because if I have all of these write-ups that they would do about me, and they would say first woman, first woman contracting officer, first woman corporate contracting officer, first woman, well, right up the line. Every one of them was the first woman to ever hold that in our area.
In the government, you had to take tests, get education. She had people working for her that was degreed, and she didn't have a college degree. And he went right through a bachelor's through the master's. But no, and that shorthand came in handy because she could write everything that the professor said in every class, to study. But it was seamless from the bachelor's right through the master's degree.
Wow.
She was in business.
Yes, so everything worked out well, and so I'm grateful. Really grateful. I don't have any bitterness towards anything. I feel gratitude. Mostly to my family. They're just wonderful. I have 3 wonderful sons. They look after me. But I've always been independent. But I'm hoping I'll continue to be independent. But I'm getting a little wobbly these days. I don't know how long independence is going to last. But I'm going to try to keep it going.
Yeah.
It's so wonderful getting to see you guys. And
This is fantastic.
Absolutely wonderful experience for us. Oh my goodness.
Jonathan, did you have any questions for Enid or Hank?
So far, I'm just taking copious notes. My office literally adjoins what we call the vault here at the library. And so I have one wall away from me, all of the Sayville High School yearbooks back to, I think it's 1926. So when I'm off this Zoom, I'm going to run in the other room and I'm going to pull that yearbook. I am so excited to go look. That's wonderful. Just an amazing life experience. Oh my goodness. So can you just share with me because this is the first time I'm meeting you and Hank, and so just so that I have some more details, what was your position in the military then? So you went to New Jersey, you were at Fort Monmouth.
She was a civilian. So
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
The highest position was
yeah, we were civilian trainee. It was trainee. They were training us to become junior engineering aides.
That's it. Okay, great.
And this explains why she can call up tech support with her computer and talk to Hewlett Packard and understand what they're saying. I could never figure that out. And I didn't know she was a junior engineer until
That's right. That is outrageous.
And they had these huge, big machines, and they had nothing for us to do. So I would play around with them and find errors and everything.
Wow.
And even after they had the reduction in force, and some of the people, I know my roommate came out to California. That was her way of getting here. And so she lived out here and got married out here. But it was amazing how things developed as you went along, I'm just talking.
Nice. Roy, did you have any questions?
Not really. I just enjoy listening to you, and I appreciate meeting you.
Well, thank you. I feel so humble. I'm sitting here living my quiet existence. I don't know how to handle all of this attention.
Yeah,
Oh,
and, you know,
well, you're
and
doing
Ida,
just fine.
she's been, because of COVID, of course, hasn't been out and about like
No.
she used to, playing cards and that sort of thing. And so this has been very good, very nice.
That's
I
great.
think
Well,
you-
I believe that Dr. Birch will be sort of the moderator, correct? For the,
I mean, I'm comfortable, but Jonathan kind of got this going, so it doesn't matter. I just want to be involved.
yeah, okay.
I
Did
would
you-
be happy just to welcome everyone, introduce, the library, thank the community for being here on behalf of this wonderful endeavor that we're all on right now, and then turn the interview over to Dr. Birch. He's done a great job with our community interviews through the entire pandemic, actually, because that's when these have started. And
Yeah.
so, Enid, I just want to say, you say that you live a quiet life. And I had to fill in a blank after that word in my mind and say quiet, remarkable.
Oh,
So as you say quiet, I'm just sitting here saying remarkable.
Yeah.
Most remarkable.
Thank you for sharing that wonderful experience. It is a delight to hear about your life experience, your trajectory, your story, and also all about your wonderful family. I mean, everyone is just quite remarkable. Thank you for sharing that with us. It's
Yeah. Hal, can you make me a co-host for 1 second? I want to show you a picture of downtown Sayville.
oh, okay.
Hal, do you know how to do that?
Yes, I do.
Awesome.
You've got it.
I got it. All right, so give me 1 second. Yeah, it's so this is downtown Sayville today.
Oh,
It's
Oh,
does
wow.
Does it look very different?
Oh, yes. Yes.
You-
Before it used to be little cottage type houses up and down, businesses. Yeah.
That's Montauk Highway, and you're looking west.
Oh,
Right. So this is it's hard to. I'm trying to think of the One Hills is still here. If you remember that drugstore, it's not a drugstore anymore, but it was refurbished. It's our oldest store.
I don't know what year the clock went in.
Yeah. Do you see that clock? You need right on the middle of the screen to the right a little bit. That clock.
yeah.
Was there a
Right.
clock? Do you remember that clock or no?
No, I don't remember.
So I'm trying to think of the old junior high is probably, right, Enid probably went to the old junior high. So I'll try to pull up the school because we redid the school where you went. I'll see if I can pull up a picture of that school. It's beautiful. It's the most beautiful building in the district.
Oh, wow.
So I'll see if I can pull that up. We call it our old junior high.
This is the old school.
this is what it looked like before.
Yes.
That's it.
Yes.
Yep.
That's the one.
I have a picture of it. I don't know if I have a current one. That's an old one.
Yeah.
But it's still, there was a discussion about whether we were going to knock it down or refurbish it. And we actually refurbished it and restored it to its original state. So, and I went to school there for 1 grade because they closed my elementary. Jonathan, you were probably affected by that too.
Well-
We went to the old junior high. It wasn't operating at the time, but it was. We had to go somewhere. Let me find this picture. You probably know Old 88.
Hmm.
That was the high school previously to the one you went to. Yeah.
Right.
Oh, wow.
That unfortunately burned down. We've
Six.
we've
Yeah.
lost we've lost a lot of buildings to fire, but
Yeah.
you know what I will do is before we sit down in February, I definitely want to do a lot more homework. You know, I mean, I want to, you know, and we'll get it to you ahead of time. But I just think it would be nice for you to kind of, you know, it's kind of a walk down memory lane. You make me really proud of our town, that you had such a positive experience.
Well, thank you. I've resisted talking about my family, and I'm proudest of them. I'm proud of him. And his daughter is, he has one daughter, and she's a doctor, radiologist, and she has 3 sons.
Yeah.
And
They come over to our house just to romp. I mean, jumping on the beds, and I remember it's the spa, and they, you know, they're all playing in the backyard. We had wonderful weather this weekend. It was in the 80s, and
Wow.
they were over just having a great time. We love those grandkids.
so what gave me a tip off that he had special skills? There was a friend of mine, and her husband was an engineer at the McDonnell Douglas, and he would come over to visit the house, and he'd always bring a roll of paper, and he would wrapping paper, and then he'd give it to Hank and ask him to draw pictures, because he was so fascinated that this young kid could draw pictures, and they were all in proportion to what they should be, you know. So he had that skill from when he was little. So he was excellent. He still is, and on everything, he's very excellent.
Not a skill I have. I can't even draw a stick figure.
And so he's rightfully proud of them, and they're doing very well too. 3 great grands.
That's fantastic.
Mm-hmm. And his brother, he's been running a pharmaceutical companies at different locations, even in Israel for a while.
Wow.
But he's back now. They make you retire at 65. So
But he never stopped work.
he's contract is
He's retired, but you know, same office and
still working
working Saturdays and
as a contractor.
keeping the plant running.
And then my youngest son, he's in that Lawrence Livermore lab that he works for. That's the largest
The
lab in
atomic
the
bomb.
world.
Yeah.
It's the largest one in the world. It has the fastest computer in the world. They do some marvelous things. The ones, you know, they have one in New Mexico also, and one other place.
But he's in Northern California, at Finland from San
He's
Francisco.
near Berkeley.
Right.
Mm-hmm. So I'm proud of them too. Really proud of them.
That's fantastic.
Uh-huh. So this has been so inspiring talking with you guys, because as I listened and as I spoke, I had forgotten so much of this, and it's coming back to me. I realized it was quite a time in my life that you're asking about.
Yeah, it's good therapy.
There you go. All right. Well, if nobody else has any questions, and I'll just ask once more, Hank or Enid, do either of you have any questions or anything else that we should have talked about?
No, do you, have you been able to get my text messages?
Yes.
They come-
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, as I think of things, I'll just shoot them over to you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And we can always do the video anytime you want as well. Anytime you want to do one of these, just to chat face to face, we can always do that. If you're comfortable and you want to do it again before the event in February, just so that it's fresh in your mind, we can always do another one.
I think it'd be helpful.
Yeah, it might be. So
Sure.
Yeah. I was reading over your questions that you asked when you sent, and you asked about a little about my parents. They both were born in Jamaica, different areas in Jamaica, and my father was in World War I.
Wow.
And he left he went to England and he used to drive trucks in World War One.
He was part of the British Army.
Yeah.
Oh, British
right.
Army. Oh, okay. What was your dad's name?
Alfred Moses Burton.
Well, like the ties between Britain and Jamaica. Like I had friends from college that were Jamaican educated, and they were just better English students than we were. I mean, in terms of their spoken and written language, so it makes sense that's with you and your brother, because it's just a fine education. So your parents were born in Jamaica. I saw that. I read your biography.
And how do you spell the last name?
By Burton.
No, your dad's last name.
Oh, no, his middle, it was Alfred.
Alfred
Moses, like
Moses.
Moses Burton, Burton.
Right.
Oh, Moses Burton. Okay, I'm sorry, I misunderstood you.
Mhm.
I have the ancestry. I'd like to look him up. Is your
Yeah.
dad? Is he buried in one of the military cemeteries by chance?
No.
Okay.
No, he left Britain and came to the United States directly. He didn't go back to Jamaica. And then that was my understanding. And then my mother, they had a way of, her oldest sister came to the United States, and then she sent for my mother. So when my mother came, they both of them became citizens, United States citizens. When they met in New York
In the early 20s.
in the
I see.
early 20s.
And what was mom's name?
Winifred McKinley.
Yeah, she had a number of brothers and sisters. That family's still very close together.
Hmm.
And it's in a part of Jamaica called St. Elizabeth Parish, and they live in Santa Cruz.
Oh,
And the family did quite well in Jamaica. And I was fortunate to have visited them. I was heading out to sail with some buddies in St. Martin, out of St. Martin, and a cousin called and said they were having a special event. So honoring her cousin in Jamaica. And he has a factory and hires a lot of people, and it's a metals factory. He does metal fabrication, roofing, windows and stuff. And but he donates a lot to the schooling. He'll do all the windows for schools, and so they were hiring him. And I thought it was just a casual event. So I asked, how should you dress? Oh, dress the way you want, you know. So I showed up in Jamaica, and that morning we were leaving this palace, and it's hot and humid, and they came down in suits. Everybody was wearing suits and ties, and I'm wearing like a flowered shirt, and khakis. But they said, don't worry about it, So I went there, and then I said, here's where we're sitting. And then I looked at it. Right in front was Prime Minister, was, the entire cabinet. Everybody who was anybody in Jamaica was at that event.
wow.
So I got to see the family there, go back to the homestead, the great grandparents' homes that they built. They bought at the top of this mountain in Santa Cruz, there's these two really nice homes, and those were the slave owners' homes. And
They had slaves.
but they bought the slave. It's a beautiful home up on top of this mountain, and when you look out the back of it, it drops right off to the ocean. And so they bought it, and the whole family. They have different concepts. People, they don't borrow money from a bank. They borrow money from each other's businesses. So the family only invests in the family. So the whole family owns this house, and they sold it. It was full of furniture, from the 1800s, early 1800s, and they sold the furniture, and they were able to pay off the house just on the furniture. The only thing they left was the gong. You know, when the slave owner would ring the gong to call for the slaves, that sits in the living room. You can gong. But it's kind of ironic that they now own all. And
Poetic justice is what you could call it. Poetic justice.
Yeah,
you know,
exactly.
all of my great-grandparents were born during slavery. All of them, and on my father's side also. And my great-grandfather on my father's side was born in 1943. And he, 48. 48? 1848 or 43 or 48, I can't remember. But he, in Virginia, so I know he was born during slavery, but I don't know how he became a lawyer and a judge and the sheriff of the town. And, you know, he went down during Reconstruction. And so it's kind of interesting, you know, we're not that far from slavery. It's that people think of it as a distance past, but that was just not my great-great-grandparents, but just my great-grandparents. And so it's kind of interesting. It's interesting how far people have come since then.
Absolutely.
Yeah, slavery ended in the 1830s in Jamaica and most of the world, actually.
We were very far, right? We were last. We were last. We were last to end it.
Yeah, we were the last. And
yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, that's, well, that explains some of your background too.
yeah, I guess.
Right.
Yeah, raising three boys was kind of fun, but I look at them sometimes and wonder how they know how to do all of that. They can do a lot of things that I'm very proud of.
As you should be.
I love the inkwell story. That's I think I'm gonna tell my kids that after we hang up the phone. That's very endearing.
Which story?
The inkwell, when your braid would go in the boy's inkwell.
Oh, love that.
That's one to lighten up a school board meeting.
Yeah.
That's funny. But I'm going to do...
going in his inkwell.
I definitely will do my research before we talk again, because I think it's, to me, this is just so exciting and interesting.
Yeah. Well, it's really wonderful talking with you guys. I feel very impressed by all of you. Thank you so much for calling me and thinking about me.
Well, thank you.
Wow.
And thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for joining us. And Hank, thank you for helping pave the way to make this all possible.
Contact me.
It would be nice, Enid, if we could get somehow, and maybe this will turn into that, it would be nice if maybe you could connect with some of your classmates and maybe you could talk, Enid, through Zoom with them. That would be nice, because COVID is hard. That might be a nice thing that could happen from this,
Yeah, everybody's at home.
The problem is that at 96, I don't have too many left.
Yeah, that's true.
That's true.
There aren't that many left, and that's the part that's hard to take, and we've gone separate paths for so long. But in the process of getting away from one thing, I've left some very important things, let them go too, So I just have to live with that.
Yeah, right.
Well, you lived a good life.
Thank you.
You're welcome, and it's been nice talking to you.
Yeah, it's sure nice talking with all of you too.
All right. Well, I guess we'll shut her down here, and we'll have another session like this prior to the February session. Just so everybody's up to speed.
All right.
Okay.
Great.
About how many people will we have in that session?
The next practice session will probably be about the same.
I mean, for the what we're working
Oh,
towards?
for the Sayville, for the library presentation. Well, what will happen there is we'll just have the narrator and yourself will be the only ones that can speak. Everyone else will be muted until then Jonathan, who's hosting it, he may open it up to some questions, but you won't get bombarded with a whole bunch of people speaking at the same time. That won't happen.
Right. You'll see a lot of people, but the only people talking would be like, Jonathan and I are co-hosts, and,
Right.
and if things come up with Roy and Hal, like we could, open it up and they can participate, but it's not a ton of people talking at the same time. It would feel very similar. You would just be looking at more people.
And you mentioned that it would be recorded also, right?
Yes, yes. And I have recorded today as well, not necessarily for any other purpose than if you would like, Enid and Hank, if you want to watch this, what I'll do is I'll send you a link so you can watch
Oh,
today's
fantastic.
interview.
I'll send it to my brothers also because,
Yes,
the world is small.
it is. And so I thought it'd be a good idea just to memorialize today's talk.
Right,
Great.
right. Yeah,
All
I
right.
could my brothers on this.
Yeah, that'll be great. Yes.
That's awesome.
Fantastic.
Awesome.
Just as a logistical question, is everyone okay with having the official community interview then on Wednesday, February 24th at 7 p.m.? Is that okay on everyone's calendar?
7 Eastern time. So
Yeah.
it'd be,
Yes, unfortunately. Sorry.
yeah, I have it down at 4 our
Yeah.
time.
4
Is that
o'clock
okay for you?
Pacific. Yeah.
Well, I'm sorry, Jonathan, what was it again?
Sure. It's February 24th at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So then that would be 4 p.m. Pacific. Is that okay for you, Hank and Enid? Is 4 p.m. all right?
Yeah, what
Yes.
day of the week is that?
It's a
It-
Wednesday.
It's going to be February 2021.
Right.
The 24th.
Wednesday, okay. Mm-hmm.
Is that time okay for
Oh,
you?
Yeah,
yeah.
that's
Would be
perfect.
4 p.m. your time. Okay, great. I wanted to make sure that we were considerate of that. So
Right.
And Jonathan, will this be in the Suffolk County News? Will it be advertised?
Oh, I'm sure we can do that. I have a couple of connections over there, thanks to Dr. Birch, and we can certainly do that. We'll get it into the library's newsletter. It's actually the newsletter deadline for all of the January and February programs is actually today. So I've already put this into the upcoming newsletter.
Good.
That will go to print probably early December, and then it will hit Sayville probably mid to late December. And then that'll give us plenty of lead time because then we will also do some social media blasts and we will advertise this on Facebook, Instagram. I have a distribution list of it's between 50 and 60 local community organizations. I'd like to share it with them as well. And just make sure that we really get the message out for a very remarkable interview to come. And
Yes.
something that is I really truly believe very inspiring for this community
Definitely.
to sit down and share together.
And Hank and Enid, I know I've already told you this, but just once again, so you're clear, this is hosted by the Sayville Library, and it is sort of multiple organizations. It's the Sayville Historical Society, of which Roy is the president, and it's the Sayville Alumni Association. And I guess I'm not sure, Dr. Birch, is the Sayville School Board also involved, or is this?
Yeah, well, and definitely. So,
Okay.
and that was why I wanted to make sure I tagged in 2 social studies teachers from each level, from the high school and the middle school. And Mrs. Hart, she's active in the Historical Society as well. She couldn't be here for this, but she's really excited. And she's lovely. And she really is, she's the chair she runs the history club in the high school. So, but this is something that is pretty special. So I'm sure we're going to advertise it a lot through the school district. And the Suffolk County News is going to be very excited about this too.
Oh, sure.
Excellent.
Wow.
Okay.
Did you still have that? Remember that little building used to be The library stood off by itself, and I can't remember exactly, but it was my favorite. It had the most wonderful piney odor when I'd go in, but that was my favorite spot to go during the day.
So we had, if you're talking about the old Sayville Library, we were there from 1914. I think we were still on Main Street, Sayville, but it moved to a house on Collins Avenue. And then in 1966, there was a renovation to that house, and we
Right.
expanded into a children's room. And then in 2000, I want to say it's got to be 2007 or 2009. I have to look back. We built a brand new building. And so we are actually right next to the old junior high. And we are on the site of Old 88, the original Sayville High School.
Oh.
The pediment for like the front pediment of the, thank you. Whoever did that, thank you, James. So this is our brand new library. It's brand new. It's about 11 years old now. We actually, in the children's room, we have the original pediment. It's an enormous wood triangular piece with 1888 inscribed on it, and it's the front pediment from Old 88. And so there are just some design elements that are similar to Old 88, but it's a very modern building, and it would probably remind you of a small college library now. It's very technologically up to date. We are extremely thankful for this building.
I bet.
Outstanding.
Thank you for sharing that with me.
I like that you kept the character of the library, though, and the
Yeah.
architecture,
Yes.
consistent with the town. I've only been to Sayville once in my life, and what was I, in high school or after?
Can't remember.
Yeah, it was the first time I'd ever seen fireflies. I remember that.
Oh. Well, after COVID, come on back. That's it. You've got friends out here, so absolutely, come on back.
And here's the original library. Enid, this is the space that you would go to. I wish I had pictures of the inside for you.
Oh, I have pictures of the inside of that building, but I remember Enid she was going to the library in the 40s, early 40s. So that's
So
way
is it-
before this library that you're
In the
showing us now was
Ah,
built
I was going in the 30s.
in the 30s.
Wow.
Yeah.
It was probably the White
And-
House on Collins.
Yeah, could be.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
It
because the
had-
one you just had up, Dr. Birch, that was built, what, 1960 or so?
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
'cause
wow.
that's sort of
So
a,
cool.
Enid was already out working for generals by the time that was built.
Very true. Oh, well,
Okay.
this is lovely. Thank you, Hal. You totally made it sound. Jonathan, you got the ball rolling.
The pleasure is all ours, and I can take none of the credit. I can only look out to my community and say thank you, Hal, Roy, James, and Enid and Hank. Thank you so much for this. Truly inspiring and remarkable. Like this is one of those high points in your career that when I retire, I'm going to look back and say, I remember this interview. And this will be
you're so kind. Oh,
That's
thank
prized
you.
possession, a prized possession in my time here. So thank you.
Well,
All right. Thank you, everybody.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Nice
Bye-bye.
meeting
Be safe.
all of
Be
See you
safe.
again soon. Take
Okay.
care.
Bye-bye.
Okay.
Goodbye.
Bye-bye.